Don't worry. At some point this season, we will start talking about the Vancouver Canucks and whom it is they can draft. Even the video earlier today was kind of setting the scene for Canucks fans as to whom we should be paying attention to. Gavin McKenna, Ivar Stenberg, Keaton Verhoff. Are the Vancouver Canucks even going to be that bad? To get one of those guys? I don't know. Thatcher Demko keeps on winning games, man. Things are getting tough. But in this video, instead of talking about the upcoming draft, I wanted to dive into the first overall pick of 2023. You know him, you love him, he is a mod on this YouTube channel, and I honestly, in my heart of hearts, do believe that it is him. Today we're talking about Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks because, unfortunately, Bedsy has been out with an injury the past few games. This has led to some pretty serious fantasy hockey decisions on my behalf. Do I drop Tyler Bertuzzi? He was already dropped earlier, but then I got him picked up when he was starting to score goals again. Bedard's absence in the lineup has put Bertuzzi in a really bad spot. The guy's not scoring anymore, unfortunately. But Connor Bedard himself is the superstar for a reason. Before his injury, which has sidelined him for 2 games so far, he had scored 44 points in 31 games played, on pace for 114 points over 80 games. This guy, had he not gotten hurt, would have still probably been on pace for 50 goals on the year. He would have been on pace to doubling his point production from last year. Double it and give it to the next person, eh? Why don't you, Connor? But the reason we are talking about Connor Bedard today, aside from the crazy season he has had, is because of a video that was posted onto the Chicago Blackhawks YouTube account earlier this week. Take a look at this. It was from yesterday, and it's going to be linked in the description. This is the Every Shift Season 4 Episode 2 video on their YouTube account. It's essentially a documentary-style look at some of the players and the stories surrounding the team. They go over some of the games that they had played on their recent road trip, which includes Vancouver, Calgary, and a bunch of other cities in Canada. But if you go over to the 4-minute-ish mark of this video, you will see some really interesting mic'd up footage of Connor Bedard going out there and skating with the North Shore Winter Club. Now, I'm pretty sure if you are from Vancouver or you're from the area, Richmond, Coquitlam, Burnaby, Poco, you're probably aware of how the hockey system works here and how some of these hockey prodigies get their goings. Connor Bedard was a part of the North Shore Winter Club, alongside of the North Vancouver Storm and the West Van Academy. This is where he learned how to play hockey, and on the recent road trip where Chicago visited Vancouver, Bedard paid a visit to the North Shore Winter Club and was able to hang out with some of the kids over there. Interesting trivia fact, you can see Connor Bedard ends up meeting with R.J. Celebrini, who is the younger brother of San Jose Sharks phenom Macklin Celebrini and Vancouver Canucks prospect Aiden. The fact that both Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini and his folks are all from the Vancouver area is quite funny. And I know that Macklin technically grew up in Golden State because his dad was with the Warriors and whatever, but still, there is that nice connection to the Canucks. And Bedard ended up doing some pretty fun stuff. He hung out with the kids, he was able to practice with them. But a really interesting moment shows up in the video around the 5-minute mark of the documentary. A kid goes out there and tells Connor Bedard, "I'm sorry, but I hope you lose tomorrow. I'm cheering for the Vancouver Canucks." Bedard then goes out there and chirps back. He's like, "Oh, I don't like that. I was going to give you a fist bump, but now I'm not going to." And then the kid in the red here on the right side, he's like, "You should go to the Canucks." Which I'm going to go out there and say, props to you, kid, for saying what everybody in that building was probably thinking in the back of their minds. Please, Connor, join this team. Bedard then responds. The kid's like, "You should join the Canucks." And Connor's like, no. And then the camera quickly cuts out. Who knows? He could have been like, no, not yet. And then maybe that would have sparked a whole bunch of speculation, and the Chicago Blackhawks media team would have been like, hey, what the hell, Connor? Like, this is for Chicago Blackhawks TV. You can't be saying that stuff on air. Anyways, we know that based off of previous interviews and historical data, Connor Bedard's favorite hockey team was, and I don't know, maybe it still is, the Vancouver Canucks. Even in his pre-draft interview video with Jesse Pollock of TSN, Connor Bedard said that his favorite player in the National Hockey League was Tyler Mott. Usually somebody says McDavid or Draisaitl or a Quinn Hughes if you're Zeev Buium. People will point to talents like Pavel Datsyuk or Ovechkin or Sidney Crosby as being their favorite players in the league. But this guy's favorite player was Tyler freaking Mott, a guy who doesn't go out there and score all too much, a guy who is not really one of the most highlight reel players, although he does have a nasty dangle in him once in a while, but a player who made his bread and butter with Vancouver fans, Tampa fans, Detroit fans, New York fans, Ottawa fans, because of his work ethic, his undying nature on the ice. Tyler Mott was a fan favorite in this city. And Connor Bedard having the awareness to be like, yeah, no, that's my favorite player. The fourth liner that plays like a buzzsaw and never lets up. Not the top superstar Swede who had 100 points that season. Not Quinn Hughes, who was going out there and quitting on his team. Not JT Miller, who was a power winger. Not Brock Besser or a Sedin twin or whatever. It's Tyler Mott. Connor Bedard is truly based, and I think this opens up the door for a lot of fans to start talking about the idea of Bedard eventually playing in Vancouver one day. Here's what I'm thinking. At some point, the NHL went through a pretty interesting shift where player destinations seemed to align more so with what they wanted rather than what just inevitably ended up happening. Because I feel like for a long time throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, NHL hockey was mostly greeted with guys that just kind of stayed where they were, signed long-term deals, and if they got traded, it was because the team needed other assets, not necessarily because the players were asking out. I'd say it was only really in the 2020s where we started to see guys like John Tavares leave his team only to go home. You know, it's been years that Steven Stamkos and Doughty and all these other Toronto guys were linked to Toronto. John Tavares was the first guy to actually fulfill that prophecy. That was in 2019, and then a few years later, we saw Matthew Tkachuk willingly express his desire to leave Calgary, and they wanted to go to a southern U.S. state. Johnny Gaudreau ended up leaving because he wanted to go home. Mitch Marner did the opposite. He wanted out. And he didn't stick around in Toronto because he was like, yeah, no, sorry, I want to peace out of here. And the latest example was Quinn Hughes, who was open with his team saying, yeah, no, I don't want to be here. I am not going to re-sign. And they ended up giving him the opportunity to go out. They sent him to where he didn't necessarily want to go. I don't think Minnesota was his first choice. But considering the circumstances, New Jersey not being able to get it done, and Quinn Hughes now all of a sudden saying that he'd be really open to extending in Minnesota, it seems like everything worked out there. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know Connor Bedard personally, even though I would like to believe I played an online shootout against him after one of our streams one day. But for this guy to be in the spotlight of Vancouver lore and the Vancouver hockey scene for so long, it feels like a match made in heaven for this guy to be a Canuck one day. And if it does happen, which I'm not saying it's like never going to, I'd just say it's probably a lot more likely that Chicago pays the moon and the stars to this guy and tries to give him the best team possible to help him stay in a competitive environment, a winning environment, unlike the Quinn Hughes situation, potentially unlike the Tkachuk-Gaudreau situation. If that doesn't happen, then I would love to see Connor Bedard in a Canucks sweater. Bedard, Pedersen, Rossi. That'd be awesome. Have Rossi on the wing at that point, man. If Bedard eventually comes to the Vancouver Canucks, then we have to find that kid in the Chicago Blackhawks documentary that yelled to him, hey, you should come to the Canucks, and give that guy a medal. Because you, my friend, may have just set the seeds to building the long-term future that fans all over this city have been waiting for. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about how well Bedard has been playing this season and the idea of him potentially one day becoming a Vancouver Canuck. Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's not? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.